Crash by Jerry Spinelli. Chapters 5 and 6, read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. Chapter 5. My mother didn't like the peel job on the tree, so I was grounded for 3 days. My sister collected the scraps of bark and got some Elmer's glue and pasted them back onto the tree trunk like a jigsaw puzzle. When I knocked on the door of the garage house, I could hear him squealing, "He's here!" and running. The door flew open. He looked at me like he hadn't seen me in years. "Hi, John. Come on in." "It's Crash," I told him. He didn't answer, just closed the door behind me. The white-haired man and a lady showed up. The kid stood between us. He straightened up, put on this serious, grown-up face, and said, "John, I would like you to meet my mother and father, Mr. Raymond A. Webb and Mrs. Glenda W. Webb. Mother, father, this is my best friend, John Patrick Coogan." They got all smiley and stuck out their hands to shake and said like a duet, "Nice to meet you, John." "Call me Crash," I said. The mother just stood there grinning. The father nodded. "Crash it is." I crashed into my cousin with my football helmet and knocked her all the way out into the snow. He nodded some more. He whistled. "I see." The mother spoke up. "Pen, why don't you take John, Crash, to your room for a few minutes till dinner is ready?" Every other house I ever saw, you had to go upstairs to the bedrooms. Here you just went a couple of steps from the front room and bam, you were there. "Didn't you ever live in a 2-story house?" I asked him. He thought. "In North Dakota, we lived on the 2nd floor of a house, but somebody else lived on the 1st floor." I shook my head. Weird. His room was weird, too. "Where's your toys?" I asked. He dove under his bed and pulled something out. "Here." "What is it?" "A Conestoga wagon. It's just like the one my great-great-great-grandfather Webb went out to North Dakota in. My great-grandfather made it for me. He said there's a place in North Dakota where you can still see the ruts in the ground from all the wagon trains." It was wood, not even painted, old-looking, about ready for the junk heap. He pulled it across the floor. "It wobbles," I said. He just kept grinning at it like it was going to stand up on its hind wheels and bark. I had been thinking about how some kids call their grandfathers Pop Pop. "So," I said, "what do you call him? Pop Pop Pop?" I was too busy laughing at myself to hear his answer. I looked around. "So where's the rest?" Now he was pulling the wagon in circles. "The rest of what?" "Your toys." He pointed to the wagon. "There it is." "I mean the rest." I looked under his bed. I nosed into his closet. Dump trucks, fire trucks, cars, cranes, steam shovels, Batman, Spider-Man, Dino. "Wait!" he squawked, and he ran to a bookcase filled with books and grabbed an old pretzel tin. He pried off the lid. "It's not a toy, I guess, but it's pretty neat." I looked. Dirt? "It's dried mud from the Missouri River. There's an old legend. If you scoop up some from the bottom of the river and you wait 50 years, the mud can heal whatever's wrong with you. All you have to do is add water and make it mud again and put it where it hurts and the hurt goes away." I snorted. "You believe that?" He shrugged. "Maybe. Anyway, my great-grandfather got this mud from the bottom of the river 64 years ago. Next to my Conestoga wagon, it's the best thing I have." He closed the tin and put it back on the shelf. Mud. I shook my head and went to the window. How pitiful could you get? He had only one toy to his name, and what was worse, the dumb pork roll didn't even know how bad off he was. It was depressing to be in that room, so I was glad when his mother called, "Boys, dinner, come and get it." Chapter 6. At first I thought they were hamburgers. but the color wasn't right. Fish cakes? I took a bite. Big mistake. Both parents were looking at me. The mother said, "Pen, didn't you tell your friend?" Webb gawked at his mother. His eyes bulged. A pained look came over his face. "Oops, I think I forgot." "Forgot what?" I said. "You didn't really forget, did you, son?" the father said. Webb looked sheepish. "I guess not." I guessed I was getting a little tired of all this claptrap. I aimed myself straight at Webb. "What am I supposed to know?" Webb's eyes shifted to me. "I was supposed to tell you that we're vegetarians." I had never heard that word. "What's that?" I said. Meanwhile, I'm thinking, are these people ninja tomatoes or something? "We don't eat meat," Webb said. "And you didn't tell him," said the father, "because you were afraid if you did he might not want to come for dinner." Webb nodded. His face was in his plate. I was still wondering if I heard him right. "You mean you don't eat hot dogs?" All three said, "No." "Hamburgers?" "No." "Chicken? Turkey? Steak?" The father propped his elbows on the table, clamped his hands together, smiled. "Crash, I guess we just feel that animals are God's creatures and it's not for us to consume them." I still had the first bite in my mouth. I figured whatever it wasn't one of God's creatures. I pointed to my plate. "So, what's that?" The mother chirped. "Oat burger," all cheery. "Look," said Webb. He poured pancake syrup over his. "They're great this way." The father chuckled. "I'll relieve the boy's misery." He left the table and came back with a trash basket. He held it at my side. "Drop her in here, Crash." I leaned over, opened my mouth, and let the oat burger blob fall into the basket. He took it away. The other stuff on my plate was candied sweet potatoes, string beans, and something I didn't recognize. Little brown clumps. Mrs. Webb saw me looking. "They're breaded mushrooms. Try one." I tried one. It was delicious. "What do you think?" she said. I shrugged. "It's okay." Webb piped. "John has a great-great-grandfather, and he's 115 years old." 4 grown-up eyeballs landed on me. I had to think quick. "And I do dive bombing, too," I said. "Want to see?" I didn't wait for an answer. I jumped up from the table and went behind their sofa. I dived over the back of it, landed on my head and hands on the cushion, pushed off, swung my feet around, and landed on the floor. I threw out my arms. "Told ya." They clapped. We went back to eating. I stuck with the sweet potatoes and mushrooms. Webb kept pushing the syrup over and telling me what I was missing by giving up oat burgers. To shut him up, I said, "Did you know your son's a Quaker?" The parents looked at each other, at the kid, at me, and broke out laughing. "Yes," said the father, "we do know that. As a matter of fact, Mrs. Webb and I happen to be Quakers, too." I said, "Oh, does that mean you don't believe in war either?" "I'm afraid so," he said. "Well, that's too bad," I told them. "Your kid is missing out on a lot of great stuff, especially at Christmas. About half my presents were usually war things. Last year I got a G.I. Joe action figure and, oh man," I was getting into it now, "I just remembered my bazooka. It's a combination machine gun and bazooka. First you wipe out all the infantry with the machine gun, and then you go after the tanks. It has an armor-piercing shell. Sets the tanks on fire, roasted the guys inside like they're marshmallows." I sat back and let that all sink in. Let them see what they were missing. After a while the father smiled and said, "I see." Everybody just chewed for a minute. I have a grandfather named Scooter, I said. Now that is something, said the mother. Yeah, I popped another mushroom. So, I said, are you poor? The parents started laughing again. I never knew I was so funny. I'm beginning to see why they call you Crash, said the father, whatever that meant. He went on, to answer your question, no, I wouldn't say we're poor. Would you? Looks like it to me, I said. Your kid hardly has any toys, and you only have one floor on your house. I decided to be nice and not tell them it looked like a garage. More smiles. No, said the father, we're not poor at all. In fact, I would say in a lot of ways, we're rich. Could have fooled me. Maybe they have a limo out back, I thought. I ate a few more breaded mushrooms. I looked around the room. I got up. Something had been bugging me from the start, and now I knew what it was. I checked out the kitchen. I took another look at the kids' room. I checked every room in the place. I came back to the table. They were all staring at me. I stared back. Where's the TV? We don't have a TV. The words came from the kid, and I stared at him. Huh? He said it again. We don't have a TV. You're tricking me. He wagged his head, eyes all wide. No, really. What do you do on Saturday morning? I play, read, and we go places, the father chimed in. We're looking forward to visiting places around here, said the mother. This is all new to us Flickertails. Crash, the father spoke. We're thinking of driving out to the Amish country this Saturday. I understand we're not too far from there. Would you like to come along with us? Webb squawked. Yeah! I'll be watching cartoons, I said. We could wait till they're over. Nah, my dad's taking me to see the Phillies game. He backed off. Well, maybe some other time. Maybe never, I thought. Dessert was gingerbread squares with warm lemon sauce. I ate 6 of them and got out of there.